Today we're analyzing a property on. Today we're analyzing a property in Kansas. Specifically, it's Johnson County in Overland Park, which is one of like the top places to live. Now, if you're looking for let's say you're looking for a contractor in Kansas City, definitely check out the podcast I did with Tyler Aiken. I mean, he's done plenty of rehabs in Kansas City and also in Johnson County. So definitely make sure you go in there and get the right amount of information. I mean, we went as deep as like how much does a replacement cost? How much does a paint job cost? I mean, I don't know how to get more specific for you, but he specifically works with a lot of investors. So I highly recommend for you to check him out and obviously do your own due diligence, right? So today I'm looking at Johnson County and I figured, hey, I would just look at the properties that just came onto the market. This one just came on the market 9 hours ago. So it came on there during Thanksgiving. So while everybody's sleeping, you can do some work. So I would say, I would just redo this entire home, to be honest with you. I mean, this is pretty old. I would try to modernize as much as possible. Let's see what's going on in basement. Basement looks pretty shoddy, to be honest with you. Not loving this, especially those windows right there, but it looks like just a lot of storage here. I'm not sure what they're adding to square footage down here, but this place could use a lot of love. I would definitely put a cage around this HVAC. I don't know why they have just boards all the way around. It seems like someone just messed up on this rehab and just completely gave up on it. 1, 2, 3 bedrooms right there. And then they have a rec room downstairs, and they think there's another bedroom down here, but I don't really see this being a bedroom or a legal bedroom at the bare minimum. But hey, maybe there's a way for you to turn it into a legal bedroom, right? By adding a door downstairs. So here's what I'm looking at. I would want to get two numbers first and foremost. The first thing I want to look up is I want to look up Johnson County Housing 2026 payment standards. And that will bring me to this website right here, which is the housing authority that manages all the Section 8 vouchers. If you go to this page and look at 2026 payment standards by zip code, you can see right here in 66212, which is zip code right here, your 3-bedroom payment standard is 2100 and your 4-bedroom payment standard is 2425. Great. That gives me a little bit of an idea of what the rents in this area are fetching. Now, I can see down there 66213 is probably a higher one. So I probably want to look at properties in 66213 next because it seems to be a area where they're fetching higher zip codes, higher rents. Then I want to compare that with the market rent. And I go to affordablehousing.com, I go to the owner section, I go to the rental estimate, plug in the address, plug in bedroom count, and that's how I find out what's the current market rent here. Now, obviously, this is for 25 units with a 0.64 mile radius. So these could technically, right? These could technically just be apartments, but chances are this is already above my payment standard. So I'll be very comfortable underwriting my property at 2100 for a 3-bedroom. Now, ideally, if I can turn this into an additional bedroom somehow for 2425, I would want to do that. But let's see what the market fetches for. Market rent's about $300 more at $25.35. So that gives me a sense of what I can possibly get. Again, you can look up these payment standards just by looking up 2025 Johnson County payment standards, and that will get you a lot of rents. And again, you have to figure out what is the rent reasonableness test. The rent reasonableness test essentially allows you to figure out, all right, what is the lower of the two, right? When I compare what's on the market rent with what my payment standard is, what's the lower of the two? Because if you understand what the rent reasonableness test is and you look at the language for it, it essentially states that you can't rent out at a higher amount for your monthly rent amount. You can't charge more on a monthly basis simply because you're renting out to a voucher holder, right? Obviously, there are instances or exceptions to that rules. There are some areas like Texas I've had on guests on before where sometimes they just give the full payment standard, and sometimes it's a little bit higher than what you see. So these are the factors that you have to consider when you are analyzing these properties. All right. So let's go ahead and plug in these numbers. I'm going to use 2100 right now as my rental estimate, even though I can see that I can probably get 2200 on the market. So just using this as $2,100 for my rental estimate right now, let's go ahead and analyze this deal together. Now, for those of you that want to analyze the deal alongside with me, just go to affordablehousing.io, not .com. go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, and that's the fastest way for you to copy the spreadsheet. All right, go there, get a copy of the spreadsheet, and just analyze alongside with me. Now, for this property, I would say I probably have to assume that I need to repaint the entire house. The bathrooms, one, I'm gonna remodel. I mean, you must make it look nice at this point, right? You might be able to save some stuff without, but for the most part, you're replacing most of the stuff. All right, so let me just estimate the rehab right here. 250 grand, 250,000. Boom. My renovations, it's going to be roughly, let's go to my rehab calculator spreadsheet right here. For the roof, I always assume I'm going to replace the roof for this property. I mean, it looks pretty bad shape, to be honest with you. So I'm going to assume that my roof is going to cost me roughly around 12 grand. I am going to assume that my garage door probably needs to be replaced. There's 2 garage doors there. I am going to, what else do I need to do on the outside? I think that's okay for now. For my rehab, I'm going to assume I'm going to repaint the entire house. This is a 1913 square feet home, 19313. I'm going to do about 380 a square foot on this property. For my flooring, I need to assume that I need to replace maybe, oh yeah, I'm just going to replace half, almost of the flooring. 1913 right here at $8 a foot. My kitchen, I'm going to remodel the entire thing for about 10,000. My bathroom, I am going to do about 3 bathroom renovations, about 8 grand, all 3. All right, cool. So that gives me a general understanding. I'm assuming the HVAC is okay for now. I'm not making any guesses, but at the minimum, I'll put in $90 for the cage for the rehab. Now, I will probably have to redo the entire house for electric to kind of get up to code. It just looks out of shape here. New plumbing. Do I need to replace the plumbing? I'm going to guess I need to do that. I will probably replace the water heater while I'm here. So that gives me a lot of renovations right now. Again, I'm not converting anything yet. So I got about 100 grand of rehab right here. Great. So if I can get $2,100 for rent for this property, let's see what my payment calculator says for my taxes and my insurance. Taxes, $254, insurance, $179. 254. And then my insurance is 179 times 1.2. That equals to 214. I'm adding a 20% premium because I'm assuming that my insurance expense estimate there is for a primary residence home. And if I'm using this as a investment property, then chances are there's going to be a premium. There's going to be extra risk that an insurance company attaches to an investment property, such as a rental, which is why I'm adding a 20% premium right here. So then I got my maintenance here roughly around 10%. Again, 10% sounds about right. I'm setting aside for rents every single month. There's no HOA fee right here. So I just want to call it the maintenance here, right? Even though I'm doing a brand new rehab, you have to assume that chances are at some point you're going to have to replace something. And notwithstanding, you have to do some landscaping expenses, just to do some upkeep on the property. I mean, all that stuff costs money. So you got to make sure that you're putting in inside money right now. So then I got 10% for my property management expenses. I got 5% for my vacancy. All right. So let's see what my expenses are. So if I go 25% down on this property, so 62.5 grand, and I got before my C9, I got an interest rate of 7.25%. I want to be able to do, let's call it financing at 187,000. So that's B4, which is my listing price, minus my down payment amount in E19. So I'll be financing $187,500. For my closing costs, I got 2.5% closing costs for 6,000. That sounds about right. Renovation dirt. This is very hefty, 115 grand. I might be overestimated, to be honest with you, but let's just see what it is, because I can always lower it and tell you what the deal might look like. So let's go ahead and do this. So as a 3-bedroom, if I rent this out as $2,100, I would be losing, after all my expenses, right, 172 minus 173, losing $173 a month. That's a negative 1.1% return, assuming you bought this property for $250,000. Now it's assuming your rehab was 116 grand. Great. 25% down, 7.25% interest rate. Great. All right, let's see what I can do next. Now, what if I bought this property for, and I can rent it out on the market for 2,200, right? So not just depending on Section 8, but depending on the market. Then I would be closer to break even at this point. And you might say like, okay, maybe might be a better deal, especially if I'm self-managing my property for now. I can make a little bit of money in interim. Completely up to you on how you want to decide. But I like to underwrite with property management expenses in place. But because if I want to outsource this management process, then I don't have to do it, right? I think a lot of us chase real estate to have passive income. And the earlier you can have somebody there that's looking after the property and also making sure the property's in great shape, the less work you have to do. So this is why I care about it. This is why I do it. And I think if you're investing in a good area, well, maybe that's your own criteria. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm just simply saying if you don't underwrite with these expenses in place, then you have bought yourself a job and you always have to manage your property because what if rent never go up again, right? Go figure. So all these factors, all these risks, you have to take that into account. So let's go ahead and say, well, what if Kent overestimated his expenses? What if it's only 2/3 of that? So if I could take my expenses in B6 and it was 0.67, so now my rehab is only 77 grand. Great. Well, now let's say I'm renting out for 2,200. I am losing $98 a month right now. That's a negative 0.8% return, $250,000 with a rehab estimate of $78,000, just rounding there, right? So that is how I figure out, okay, what's the deal? What if I was chasing 8% return? What do I need to buy this property for? You might buy this property for 120. Now, does that mean you're going to get that property for that little money? Probably not, right? 100 grand. But okay, well, what if you borrow the money to rent the property? I mean, to renovate the $77,000. You borrow at 10%. You had to repay that over. You amortize over 30 years. You make 12 payments, but you had to pay it off within 2 years. That's a lot of money. Well, now all of a sudden, you're still not making money, right? So you're just like playing with these levers, playing with these scenarios to figure out what is a deal for you. 100 grand. Boom. So in order for you to reach an 8% return, again, I'm not saying 8% is a target return for everybody. You have to decide your own criteria, but this is how you would cash for $670 a month. So you can rent it out for $2,200 a month, right? Now, taking that same scenario as before, what if I was able to spend an extra 10 grand, so plus 12 grand from the prior scenario, but now I can rent it out for 2,500. Oops, 2,500, not 25,000. Plus 12,000, boom. So now what am I willing to pay for the property? Well, if you are able to rent it out for 2,500, now instead of you being willing to pay 100,000, now you're willing to pay 123 grand, right? And that's how you mess with the different criteria to figure out if a deal is a deal for you, right? It's $9,000. This is a 3-bedroom. So now we're assuming it's a 4-bedroom now that we're renting out for 2,500 because now we can cash for $777. And that is a 7.6% return. So that's how you can adjust the levers up and down, figure out what's the deal for you, right? I'll do one more scenario. Let's say your interest rate dropped from 7.25% to 6.25%. And that can happen overnight, right? Because you understand how interest rates are correlated with a 10-year yield. Look it up. Look up 30-year mortgage interest rate, 30-year mortgage interest rate versus 10-year interest yields. And you can see that historically, the spread between the 10-year yield and the 30-year mortgage rates was about 1.5 to 2%. But we've seen as high as 3% in the last couple of years when interest rates shot up to 8%. And that's when you saw almost the entire housing market come to like a screeching halt. But we also seen as high as the high fives in the 1980s when you saw interest rate in the teens, right? That was crazy. But now this is how you can figure out what's going on. So now you can see the spreads are about 2.3%. So that's almost closer to what the norm is, but you can see another half point move there, and maybe the bond market moves with better positive news with trade predictability, or you can see the labor market breaking, and then you also see with unemployment claims going up, you're going to see interest rates going down. All right, all these factors match. So you got to figure out what you're doing in that situation to honestly decide what you're doing and what's your strategy. Because this is how I go about it. All right. So hopefully today you learn a little bit about how to analyze a deal, particularly in a property, in a market that you don't know about. Right. This is a real deal on a market. It just came on the market 9 hours ago. I'm picking this up. And if you need a general contractor, I already brought on contractors from Kansas City onto this market so you can figure out whether or not you want to learn from someone like that. Right? You have to figure this stuff out. I think this is the first step you can take because a lot of times people are just so lost. They have no idea how to get started. And I brought on contractors for you to learn in Kansas City. I've shared with you how to begin to analyze a deal in that market for the first time by looking at rents, looking up numbers, looking at estimates. Like I literally had Tyler go through all, like he literally went through my episode and he said exactly how much it costs. This is just two, and these numbers are fresh. He talks about how much does it cost for a bathroom renovation? How much does it cost for a replace your HVAC? Like we went through all the numbers. So you have those basic foundation numbers to start off your investment journey with so that you don't feel lost. You don't feel like you are at risk of getting ripped off because at least you have a baseline. That is up to you to figure out, hey, do I trust this guy? Do I not trust this guy? And that's fully on you and your judgment and character. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Friday. I hope you all spend some quality time with your family and friends today because that's what life is all about. All right. I hope you all are able to hang out. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I can't wait to see you tomorrow for day 791. Have a good one, everybody.